at the end of the day, you can have animosity towards other countries, but it's you versus the clock, and that's the way the sport works.
Jesse Lumsden, welcome to the podcast. So happy to have you on.
Thanks for having me. This is it's a good way to start the day.
You are a record holder at McMaster, Hec Crighton winner, CFL 6th overall, spent some time in the NFL, 3-time Olympian, and a 2-time silver medal world champion. I'm so excited to dive into all these things on this podcast. So really appreciate jumping on.
Of course, my pleasure.
So quickly, Jess, what are you up to nowadays, and what are you working on?
Sure. It's been about it's coming up to a year now, but I joined a gentleman by the name of Jeff Adamson, who you should definitely have on the podcast, who is one of the co-founders of and key members of really starting, building, and then eventually exiting Skip the Dishes. And we are working on a new project, Neo Financial, based out of Calgary, where we're really redefining the consumer financial space as a if you want to put us in a bucket as a fintech or as a challenger bank. So that's really the focus right now. And we can dive into that a little bit too, but it's definitely it's a great team to be a part of for sure.
Awesome. No, I remember I chatted with Jeff a couple of times because we use Skip the Dishes at some of the places I worked at before, and I can know exactly what you mean when you're like building something and then growing it and exiting out. So I think really actually excited to learn about that as well as we get on the show here.
You bet.
Before we dive into there, Jesse, I would just love to learn a little bit more about how you got started in your career, going back to like university days. And what was it that differentiated you to embark on this amazing sports career that you've been on?
I made the decision when I was about 16 years old that I wanted to play professional football as my career. And, I was very, very fortunate to have a father who played professionally and be surrounded by some pretty good people at my high school that, helped a few of us really try to pursue that dream. And the dream at that point when I was 16 was to get a scholarship to the NCAA, and that didn't happen. The schools that I was talking to back then wanted me to change position and come in as a redshirt. So I was a running back, and I was not necessarily your prototypical running back, being 6'3", quite long, lanky. So a lot of the scouts from universities saw me changing over to a safety or a linebacker. I never played the position in my life. Canada welcomed me as a running back, and I ended up at McMaster and under Greg Marshall. Ted Gavaya was the man who really helped bring me in. I came in with a great recruiting class, and I was coming in behind some very, very talented athletes and running backs, and that was my first realization of checking, having a good ego check, because I wanted to play right away. I wanted to play football. And, I was being told by certain universities that I'd start as a rookie and this, that. And, it was Coach Marshall and, the sage advice from my dad and other people that said, listen, you're wet behind the ears. You're 18. You're barely 200 pounds. You're going to play against young men now. And you're going to go and at McMaster, you're going to go learn from guys like Kyle Peer and Kojo Edu, who's a Hec Crighton winner. And you're going to develop and you're going to get your opportunities. And this is where you're going to build some resiliency. So that's, that helped a lot. And, I carried the ball a little bit, played some special teams my first 2 years. And then I really got the opportunity to start in my third year. And with our O-line, we, just gave the OUA both barrels. Like, it was awesome. It was to the point where they knew what we were going to do, and then we were okay with it.
We still did it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember, I think you had like 1,400 yards in both those seasons, I think, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. You're not wrong person to ask about personal stats. I don't know. Yeah.
Oh, that's what I love about you, man. Right after football, I know you went to the CFL, NFL, And then, along your career, I really want to dive into this right away. You've had a lot of injuries, right? I
Mm,
saw that game at Edmonton where you worked your ass off, you came back, and I think the second play of the game, you hurt your shoulder again, right?
mhm.
What allowed you to keep on going through all the shit that you've been through?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think I didn't know anything else but to like as Alfred says to Master Wayne, what do you do when you fall down? What's the most important thing when you fall down? It's the first thing you got to do is get back up. And
Yeah.
everybody's going to fall down, and you can either get stuck in at the bottom of that sort of loop, that progression loop. Ray Dalio talks about a progression loop. If you fail, you go through this sequence of learning and progressing, and how quickly that happens depends on, one, your resiliency, two, your ability to problem solve. But for me, it's I didn't, you know, I wanted to get back. I wanted to keep going. I loved what I was doing, and I didn't want a setback to stop me from doing what I was doing. It just became that setback came to, I had never experienced a major injury before, a sprained ankle here and there. But in Hamilton, that first time when I just kept dislocating my shoulder, eventually the staff said, okay, we're just going to shut you down. That was the first time that happened. Came back too quick, but I wanted to get back fast. Halfway through the season, same problem happened. And then going to Edmonton. But it was interesting enough, is it was that at that time that I was going to go into free agency. Um, I was talking to Edmonton, and Bobsleigh Canada reached out, and it was about 11 months before the 2010 Olympic Games,
Hmm.
and I never really thought, of anything of it. But I was done my surgery. I was done my shoulder surgery. Um, I was getting ready to get healthy, and I was still really focused on football. And it was my dad that said, "Go there for 2 weeks, train with Olympic athletes that you've never done before in a different sport, in a different environment. You'll learn something." And very quickly, I fell in love with the idea of becoming and representing a Team Canada athlete, and worked with Bobsleigh Canada to make it work. And you know, went out to Edmonton and was expecting to play a whole season and win the Grey Cup and then transition over to the Olympics. And then, as you said, game one, Shadiq Sabaz hit me like right in this perfect spot. And I dislocated my shoulder in a way that I'd never dislocated it before. It was posteriorly, and it was stuck and it wouldn't come back in. And I walked off the field and walked into the locker room and went to the hospital and needed another surgery.
I mean, I've seen a lot of guys, and I look at sports, but also in business, right? Like you have a couple of failures, people just pack it in, and it's like they just say, you know what, this is not for me. This is not the right thing to do. I can't keep going. You've been through that, I think, like 4 times in the CFL, and then we'll get to the Olympic piece as well because I know you've been through adversity there as well. What is one thing that you've taken from your experience in sports that you've then applied at Neo Financial, for example, that lets you keep delivering results?
I think it's more of a mentality. Being a team sport driven person, and being coming from, that idea of wanting to accomplish something great requires a process. And it doesn't matter what it is, whether you want to be the best teacher, the best doctor, the best athlete, the best employee, best politician. It requires a process, and you need to be able to see what that looks like and understand what that looks like, and then be able to work your way backwards from that to where you're actually sitting. And then understand that, okay, you have a roadmap, but understand that that roadmap is going to change, and this is where you're going to
Interesting.
build your resiliency. It's going to be these hurdles that you come across, these impediments that are going to stand in your way, that's going to test your mettle as a person and as a athlete and as a doctor. And what you do at that point is then becomes the most important thing in your life, if you still consider accomplishing that goal. And that's where I think, is really, those are the skills that I learned as an athlete that have helped me in transition into corporate. And
Yeah.
before Neo, I was working with a small private equity group on the business development side, not a finance background. Uh, but again, it's one of those things. Okay, I don't need to become an analyst to be in this position, but I need to become dangerous enough. What do I need to learn? What do I need to do? And then setting out that path to go do it.
I mean, I'm in the tech side, right? And a lot of times it's like everything that people keep saying is like, I don't know how to code. I can't go in the technology world. I don't know how to what all these things mean in the technology side. I can't go in the tech world. I mean, I come from a business background, and out of the exact same thing, learn enough to be dangerous, right? Um, a lot of people actually get scared when they say, "Holy shit, I got to learn all this stuff." And even though it's not very deep, they still have to learn enough. So, I mean, what do you do? Like, or you know, an example when you went into the finance role, how do you know what exactly you had to learn to be dangerous enough to then go and execute on that?
Yeah, asking questions. I'm coming in, and I got into that position through a mentorship that invited me to come out. And I said,
Wow.
okay, so what you know about me. I didn't study this in school. What do I need to learn? And then it's spending the time asking, being curious, asking the right questions, and being honest. Um, you know, and that's okay. It's better to admit when you don't know something than to try to fake your way through it, because people see through that, especially really good people. So, admitting that you don't know it, and very early on, uh, finance and oil and gas have the most acronyms of any industries that I've ever come
Yeah.
across. So I had in my notebook, and this is something that my mentor Chad taught me. He said, as you're taking notes and acronyms come up, just keep going through them, write it down, go look it up as soon as you get out of that meeting and you're doing your post meeting debrief. Um, and it's just figuring that out, and it's learning as you go and continuing to be curious. Those are, yeah, I mean, anytime you go into something new, especially when you get older, it becomes more of a daunting experience. The older you
Yeah.
get and you're at the bottom of a ladder again, um, it can be very humbling, but also it gives you an opportunity to check your ego and figure out what you need to do. And again, build out that process.
One thing that you did mention is starting from the bottom and being humble. What do you have to say for all the folks that are looking at instant gratification nowadays?
Yeah, well, I mean, I watched some of The Social Dilemma. I have two young
Yeah.
kids. It's definitely one of those things that it's it's scary as a parent, but it's also as somebody who didn't grow up with these sort of whether you platforms and tools. Uh, it's understanding that it's just another. It can be another. You can use it as a tool, or you can use it as a distraction, like anything. And if it's not providing you value, then it is going to be a distraction. If it's too much of a distraction, then get rid of it. If it's not important enough that's going to help you accomplish something, then push it aside. You can still use distractions. You need distractions. It's
Yeah.
You need those balances, but distractions, and what we're seeing with instant gratification and social media is that um, it's becoming a distraction to the point where it's disruptive to not only progress but also to person. And that's where having the people around you and recognizing that and being able to remedy those things is very, very important.
Yeah. I think the big thing you're touching on is like being self-aware, right? A lot of
Thank you.
times,
Yeah.
yeah, I think a lot of times when they're younger folks, younger leaders that sometimes come up to me and like, I like to get promoted in the next 6 months. I just started this role. I've delivered results. I'm like, this is not the way the world works. Like you have to come in, you gotta progress, you got all these different gaps you gotta work on. But a lot of times when they try to tell me why they believe they should get promoted right away, it's not actually their fault. It's just all the stuff that they've been accustomed to in the past
Hmm.
10 years, right? So I think
Yeah.
having that ability to be self-aware is going to go a long way. Um,
Absolutely.
I'm really, really curious, Jesse, to understand from when you started Neo Financial, and you're an athlete and you have two young kids. You're Neo Financial. You're learning a brand new, the business model, and you're still training. How do you find time to do everything? Like, what do you do very tactically that allows you to keep your life in check?
Well, thankfully, I'm done training now, so that's I can scratch that off the things to do. And now uh, I was a guy before joining Neo where I did like having a lot of balls in the air, whether it was commentary and public speaking and working at Resource, only having one child, but having now two kids at home, two young kids, and understanding that my balance and priorities need to change. So really, the last year when I joined the team at Neo. I quickly realized that uh, it's no different than training for the Olympic Games. You may not see you may not see your Olympic Games for years down the road, and it's not a set date, but it's the same. It's the same thing. So when you're there and you're training and you're focusing and you're building and you're working, that's what you have to be committed to. And then at the other side of it, it's family. And those are my two priorities in my life right now, is my family and Neo. And the good thing is that, there are other people that have young families, and we are in this together. So, being one of the older guys at Neo, that's one thing you learn very
Mm.
quickly coming into a tech company. It is
Yeah.
a lot of baby faces, a lot of youngsters, but very, very talented people. And trying to remember that when I was 25, I was doing something different, and that's okay. I'm now
Hmm.
38 and I'm doing something different. And I just have to be able to figure out how I can add the most value to, to my work, and also make sure that I'm being the best dad and partner that I can be at home. Um, so it's just, and it's not getting caught up in that. It's, it is funny because from a personal side of things, I go home to my family. I want to put my kids to bed and I want to have some fun. And you see the other youngsters, they're grinding away, and I was like, oh, I should be doing that, but I already did that, and I can still do that. I just have to do it a little bit differently. It's being there a little bit earlier. It's doing it in hours, and maybe
Wow.
sacrificing going fishing for a weekend and staying home and getting some extra things done. So it's there's still the ability to do that, but it's just different. And finding the way to do it is it's depending on the person.
How important do you think that is, to having the right company that you're working for allow you to do that as well? Because there are businesses out there, believe it or not, that actually, even though the results are there, that actually want FaceTime. So you have to
Yeah.
be in the office for X number of hours, right? So like, how would you say the organization you work for, the values that you align to, is that something that you think allows you to do this? And should people be
Yeah.
aligning themselves to better cultural values as well?
Well, our culture is a big. We work hard on our culture at Neo, and it's very upfront that we work hard, we work fast, we like working hard and fast, um, but we also have fun, and we care about our people, and we care about each other. And you need to, yeah. Some people feel like they need to have that FaceTime, although it may not matter as much. FaceTime is important, but now we're moving into a realm where working remotely is
Mm-hmm.
becoming more and more common. So you're losing on that opportunity
Journey,
for
yep.
face-to-face interaction, and you have to find different ways to do it. And it's just, what it really comes down to is communication, and being able to communicate and update and stay focused on what you're working on. I don't know if you can hear in the background, Rowan is having a bit of a meltdown, so hopefully
Yeah,
it's not
no,
too
all good, all
distracting
good.
for you. Yeah,
That's
everything, he's
cute.
fine. He's just a yeller,
Is
and
yeah,
he's
yeah,
just talking. So
yeah. Nice. Um, I've been through like we all went through this pandemic, right? And we all went through remote working. You played sports your entire life. I played in university. We love being around people, around teammates. I felt that when I was at home on Zoom calls all day long, I did miss that aspect of it, right? What do you do personally to keep yourself sane from that perspective, that you're not going to meet a lot of people, you're going to be on Zoom calls all day? How do you still make sure that mentally you're good in these kind of times?
the good thing at Neo right now is we've done everything we can to get the teams back together. So we've taken up some more space and allowed us to work in an environment that we are still, uh, you know, focused on the safety of, everybody involved at Neo, and while being in that team environment and being respectful of other people's space, but also, you know, credit to the teams at Neos of being prepared in case something does happen. So we run drills that allow us to very quickly pick up and go work from home in case something were to happen. So we don't skip a beat. So again, it goes back to, it's like football practice. Doing your
Yeah,
2 minute drill, doing
yeah.
the 2 minute drill on Thursday. It's, you don't know when you're going to need it, but you're ready when you do. So it's taking a look at the bigger picture and understanding, for us to be successful in this new world, there's going to be some different hurdles that we need to figure out.
It's like always being prepared, right? I think
Yep.
it comes naturally to athletes. What is the one hard skill that you've taken from sports, Jesse, and applied it to your business career?
It's a good question. I think I learned more about uh, becoming better as a strategic planner once I got into amateur sport, because there is more external factors that come into your ability to do your job, whether it's fundraising, whether it's, finding external resources like coaches and nutritionists, where in professional sport, all of that is in house. So that was probably one of the bigger aspects of it.
I think just for the listeners, when you say amateur sport, that's bobsled
Yeah.
for Canada.
Yeah,
That's
Team
very
Canada.
interesting.
When you the bobsleigh world, when you're competing as an athlete for Team Canada, it's considered amateur sport. Olympic sport is still, even though professionals are competing, it's still considered amateur sport.
I don't think people realize that there's a lot more than just training that goes in to amateur sport, as you said, right? Like finding your own, like fundraising, getting the resources. So that's very very impressive. I know we're running short on time, Jesse, but would love to learn a bit about your Olympic career overall. So if you can just walk through what that looked like, how many years you were there, and some of the successes.
Yeah, it's I competed for Team Canada for 9 years in 3 games, Olympic Games. I really like the fact that I went from a position. The roles changed for me quite a bit when I went from football to bobsleigh, and I'll just very quickly explain why. Is as a running back or a quarterback, you have an O line there to protect you and help you do your job. And I was, I didn't have the success I had with, I had the success I had because of my O line. I had great guys that helped me tremendously, pave the way that allowed me to run the ball. Um, Getting into bobsleigh as a crewman, the role has now changed. Your crew is essentially the 3 to 4 guys on a team. Your job is to take care of your pilot, make sure the sled is the sled's ready, everything's done, the pilot has everything he or she needs, and then your job is at the start, at the very top, and then you give your pilot the best start you can so he can navigate the track with the most velocity. So I really enjoyed that aspect of that role, because I was very appreciative of how much work it was for an O line, but how collaborative it was, and how the guys up front really prided themselves on you know working together, not being in the spotlight, just
Yeah,
being grinders and getting it done.
yeah,
And it was the same mentality when you get onto that crew, because you're sort of the roadies and the athletes at the same time. um, and it really, again, that team dynamic, really appreciated that aspect of it. The competition itself, I love competing. So being able to compete all over the world against athletes from all over the world, I love that aspect of it. And at the end of the day, you can have animosity towards other countries, but it's you versus the clock, and that's the way the sport works. So you can't get actually upset at other
somebody, yeah,
teams or nations, because
yeah.
again, it's you, it's you and your teammates on the block, and it's you versus the clock and versus yourself. So it's a very unique sport in that sense. And then just being the ability to represent Canada was something I never thought I'd be able to do, and it is the it fills me with pride to still think about it. To wear the maple leaf, and to be able to have been able to do that for so long, especially after having an athletic career
Yeah.
already.
Whenever I chat with professional, athletes that have great records, and I ask them this question, what allowed you to succeed? They all say, my training, my nutrition, etc. The reason that you are where you are in your career today, Jesse, I know now, and you're the most humble person I've met. You never once said it was you. You always said it's your O-line. And that just speaks volumes of all the accomplishments that you've achieved.
I appreciate it, but it's true. Like if yeah, I was a part of a unit, but you remove
Yeah.
3 of those people from that unit, and it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Yeah.
It's the end of the story. There's no, that's the reality of the situation. So um, I only say it because it's the truth.
Yeah. That's awesome. Before we end the podcast, Jesse, what is one piece of advice you'd have for a lot of young leaders trying to build a career in this crazy, changing, uncertain world?
You got to be resilient, and resiliency doesn't come from reading books, or um, you know it's not bestowed upon you when you're born. You're forged by fire, so you got to find ways to put yourself into situations that are uncomfortable. um, you hear the Navy SEAL phrase, be comfortable being
Being
uncomfortable.
uncomfortable.
um, and it's very, very true, because uh, there's a lot of people in this world. There's a lot of people trying to do great things, but there's not a lot of people willing to do the real shitty stuff and the really the grungy and the grimy stuff and the stuff that the most don't want to do. And that's what separates really a lot of the pack that I found. When I see it from my teammates that I was with other people that I played against. I look at the guys that hearing the stories about Skip and how they scaled and built Skip. My mentor, what he had done with his company, Pacesetter Directional. It's it always goes back to the stuff that separated them is they were willing to do things that were harder and that were more arduous than competitors. And they didn't look for quick fixes. They relied on the people to do it. Pretty simple. I mean, and that can be taken in the wrong context as well. That doesn't mean deception. That doesn't mean, cheating and
Yeah.
lying and everything like that. It means
It's a good thing you
rolling
cleared
up your.
that, because I know some people will take that back as that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and the reality is like
Yeah.
a lot of people will do a lot of nasty stuff to get to the top. But I mean, rolling up your sleeves and I hear the story of the Skip the Dishes guys. They're project managers and executives essentially going around the country putting stickers up on windows of restaurants. That's something that a lot of leaders
It
wouldn't
won't do.
do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But again, it goes back to if you're a good leader, you would never ask somebody to do something you're not willing to do yourself. So yeah, don't be afraid to roll up those sleeves. And in a world of instant gratification, as we talked about, the good things don't come instantly.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast. It was a pleasure. I'm leaving this podcast inspired. So good to have you here and finally chat with you. So thank you again for jumping on.
Really enjoyed it, and I can't wait to see what you're going to continue to do. And I'm excited to see. I love seeing the updates on LinkedIn, who you're having on and listening in, and you have some very, very talented, inspiring people on your podcast. So kudos to you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Team, remember to like, subscribe, and share with a friend, and visit tambourinebango.com for a ton of free content and exercises.